You've done the work. You've backtested the strategy. You've defined your entry and exit. The trade is on, and it moves quickly into profit. But that sudden green number gives you anxiety. Your mind screams, "Take the money before it disappears." You exit early, only to watch the trade hit your original target moments later. This feeling, the agonizing gap between knowing you have a good strategy and trusting yourself to follow it, is the trust gap. It is the single biggest blocker preventing good traders from becoming great ones. The truth is, your problem isn't the strategy. It's the profound subconscious fear of loss that overrides your logic at the critical moment. This video is going to expose the three invisible psychological forces that widen the trust gap and give you the definitive framework to finally lock your profits in and let your winners run. You will learn to trust your system even when every fiber of your being is telling you to panic. The first psychological force is the floating profit anxiety. This is the primary driver behind taking early profits. Here's a lie you tell yourself: that floating profit is my money, and if I don't secure it, the market will steal it back. The psychological truth is, this anxiety is driven by loss aversion. Your brain places a much higher value on avoiding the loss of a perceived gain than it does on achieving a larger potential gain. When your trade moves into profit, your mind immediately anchors to that current dollar amount. If the trade then pulls back slightly, you feel the pain of that disappearing profit twice as acutely as the potential joy of reaching the target. You choose certainty, a small guaranteed profit, over probability, a larger calculated profit. This is fear overriding math. Here's the fix: the risk-free position protocol. You must neutralize the perceived loss by eliminating risk as quickly as possible, thereby giving yourself psychological permission to hold the trade. Immediately after your trade moves into profit by a defined, measured amount, as in 0.5R or 1R, move your stop loss to break even. This simple mechanical action fundamentally changes your mindset. By moving your stop to break even, the trade is now psychologically risk-free. You can no longer lose money on this specific trade. This turns the rest of the position's journey from an anxiety-filled gamble into a free, high-probability opportunity. You are no longer watching your money. You are watching the market fulfill its statistical obligation. The second force that prevents trust is the self-reinforcing recency bias loop. This is what happens after you take two bad losses. Here's a lie you tell yourself: because the last two trades were losses, the current trade is also destined to be a loss. The psychological truth is, recency bias forces you to give undue importance to the most recent events. If you've just experienced a loss, your conviction in your system is at its lowest, regardless of your strategy's long-term 60% win rate. This bias destroys trust because it makes you override statistical mystery with emotional memory. You forget that your strategy is built on hundreds of trades and only remember the two that failed. When the current trade moves into profit, you don't see a potential winner, you see an escape hatch from the anxiety of the last two losses. You exit early, not because the market demands it, but because your brain demands psychological relief. Here's the fix: the rule-based evidence affirmation. You must force yourself to anchor your current action to your long-term statistical evidence. Before you exit a trade that is still following your rules, you must perform a verbal affirmation. This trade is still valid. My long-term win rate is X%. The market is currently obeying my identify the rule, as in trend line or 50 MA. I am trading my evidence, not my memory of the last loss. Furthermore, open your trading journal to a page showing 10 of your biggest, best winners. Remind yourself that letting winners run is what pays for all the small losses. You are trading your statistics, not your feelings. This breaks the recency bias loop and reestablishes trust.
The final psychological force that creates the trust gap is the strategy as savior fallacy. This is the core reason you feel responsible for managing every micro movement. Here's a lie you tell yourself. My strategy is supposed to protect me from any risk. If the price moves against me, the strategy has failed, and I must intervene immediately to save the trade. The psychological truth is no strategy is a savior. It is a probabilistic tool that will have losing trades. When you try to manually save a trade that is still within the parameters of your stop loss, you are destroying your system's edge. This fallacy is rooted in the fear that you, the operator, are the only thing standing between profit and disaster. You try to manage the inevitable random walk of the market, which is impossible, and it burns you out. This constant intervention is what kills trust in the first place, because your system never gets a chance to work as designed. Here's the fix: the handing over control protocol. You must mentally hand over the control of the trade's outcome to the market mechanics once your entry and risk are defined. Immediately after executing your entry, stop loss, and target, you must mentally or physically draw a barrier. Do not look at the 1-minute chart. Only monitor the trade on the time frame that you use to analyze it. For example, the 1-hour chart. By forcing yourself onto a higher time frame, you filter out the noise, eliminating the small pullbacks that trigger panic. You are giving the market the time and space it needs to move toward your target. You are trusting the long-term structure of your strategy over the short-term randomness of the market. Trust is built by consistently respecting the time frame of your analysis. All right, let's wrap up this deep dive into the psychological forces that ruin your execution. You now know how to combat 1. Floating profit anxiety, fixed by the risk-free position protocol. 2. The recency bias loop, fixed by rule-based evidence affirmation. 3. The strategy as savior fallacy, fixed by handing over control. Here's a key takeaway. You already have a good strategy. The reason you don't trust it is because you haven't given it a chance to work. Stop trading your anxiety about losing the profit and start trading your conviction in the system's statistics. If this framework is the edge you needed to finally hold winners to their full target, hit the like button and subscribe. See you in the next one.